Hi, and welcome to this edition of the Religion Hurts podcast. My name is Mike Harrison. This is getting to be a lot of fun to do this podcast. I believe this is episode 7 now that I've done, and I've been really enjoying just being able to walk through some of my story, share some things that are on my heart. I've gotten a lot of feedback from different people just regarding some things that I've had to share or some of my testimony. And it's been a super encouraging journey for me. And if this is your first time here, super excited to have you join. Obviously, if this is not your first time, you've been listening for a while, I really want to thank you just for taking that time, spending that time with me here. And again, I'd love to get some feedback from you regarding any of this, anything that I have to share. Today, I am going to share some really cool stuff that's happening right now, and then kind of get back into the testimony story here. I don't have my laptop today in front of me. Normally I have it sitting here and I can kind of keep a timeline, so I'm going to do my best to do it. It's because of what's going on today that things are slightly discombobulated, but not real bad, and I'll get to that all in just a minute. But I wanted to share from John 13, 34 to 35 today. I don't have my laptop here again, so I can't read the verse verbatim, but essentially the verse is, I'm giving you a new commandment. This is Jesus talking. He says, I'm giving you a new commandment to love one another as I have loved you. And that's how the world will know you are my disciples, by the love you have for one another. And really the heart of this podcast is to tell my story, tell my testimony of, my time in church and just being destroyed by churches. And that's kind of a vague way to put it. Go back, listen to the other 6 episodes, and you get a little bit better understanding where I'm at right now. But just real quick for a recap, grew up in an abusive home. My dad was an assistant pastor at a charismatic church, and but at home really abusive, really big narcissist, especially abusive to my mom. But I was also sexually abused when I was little, and then suicidal as a teenager, just really struggled with darkness, but had Christians that just poured into me, youth leaders specifically that poured into me. And I just began a real relationship with Jesus that's stuck with me through today. And then right around 30 years old, my wife and I ended up in a cult. This is after going through some different crazy church stuff. Again, it just kind of seems to perpetuate in certain things. And we ended up in a cult for almost 10 years. On my last episode, I just started talking about how we ended, we're just kind of ended up there. And we've been destroyed by church, but we've also been saved, obviously through Jesus. But we are part of a really healthy church right now. It's been a phenomenal thing for us, for both my wife and I, and we're really thankful for. And just wanted to share my story, partly, like I've said all along, for my benefit to keep growing and to share testimony of what God's done in my life. But additionally, for anybody else that's feeling hurt by church and struggling in that area, been hurt by other Christians, been hurt by family who claim to be Christians, the challenge is really real. And if you've been hurt in church, it's a really tough thing because, we're made to believe our whole life, especially as we become Christians, that church is the safe place. Church is the place you could always come to find help, to find encouragement, to find life. And yet a lot of times it's the exact opposite of that for some people. They have an entirely different story. And church is where a lot of the abuse happens. And where do you go? Where do you go at that point? What do you do? And I'm just wanting to share, some positivity and some love and some challenging thoughts for us. And so the challenging thought for today is out of John, where Jesus says, they'll know that you are my disciples by how you love one another. That's a pretty big thing. He doesn't say that you'll know you're my disciples by the way the Spirit moves in the church, by what the worship music sounds like, by what the preacher's like, by how much time you spend in the Word, or what the sermons are like, by how you love one another. And yes, love to the hurting and dying and unsaved world, if you want to look at it that way. But much more so, he's specifically talking about the way that we love each other in the church and the way that we fight for each other and do that, and to love as Christ is loved. And yes, I mean, my wife and I were talking. She got in a serious conversation with some friends this week about accountability in the church and holding each other accountable, and what does that look like and what does that mean. I think there's a lot of health and value to that. But my wife was sharing her heart, which is that she's like, you got to have a relationship with somebody before they can be somebody that holds you accountable in your life. There's a lot of Christians that I've come to know. I know some that we're close to right now, and their view on it is, well, if you're doing something wrong, I have to hold you accountable, end of story. Yet those same people often want none of that same response or same standard set for them. And the reality is, I've got people in my life that hold me accountable, that I welcome the accountability from, and I believe it's returned the other way. But there's a foundation of love and respect first and foremost. And I've talked about going through some dark things in my life, and I've got some of these friends that some of the darkness was caused by my own self, but rather than beat me up over it or hold me accountable, they just love me right where I was. Now, they didn't let me stay there. They helped me walk from darkness to light, right? I think that's a really healthy part of this. But they first love me. And when somebody loves you first and above everything, and looks at you and says, I don't care who you are and what you've done and where you're going or any of it, I just love you. And I'm showing that in my actions, not just my words. Like it's something that I live out. Well, then you can speak into my life anytime. And that was kind of my wife's point in this conversation, and I completely agree with her. So, we love to do that. Well, I shouldn't say we as a whole. A lot of Christians that I've known like to do the, we got to be like Jesus. Jesus flipped over the tables in the church. Jesus did this. Jesus rebuked Peter. Jesus did these things. But first and foremost, the entire foundation of Christianity is that Jesus put himself on the cross. Our pastor this week we had communion, first Sunday of the month, and we had communion. And our pastor was sharing, he said, you ever done something wrong and you wanted to pass the blame onto somebody else? You ever just wanted to take and just pass that blame off on somebody else for what was done? Just kind of shift the blame away? And of course we all have. And if you said you haven't, then, well, yeah, we can talk about accountability then. But he said, yeah, Jesus took the blame that we were supposed to receive, and he took it on himself. And what a tremendous thing that he did. And put himself on the cross. And I'm not saying that we should go out and take the blame for everybody else and make ourselves martyrs. But I think the reality is that what we have to consider is Jesus laid his life down for us so far as to put himself on the cross and die for our sins. Now, I'm not suggesting you go hang yourself on a cross, but I think a laid down life for your fellow brother and sister is a phenomenal thing to be pursuing. And I think the reality is, if you're not living that kind of lifestyle, having that heart that's willing to lay your life down for other people, judgment, you start to get into accountability, and I think you'll walk pretty quickly into judgment, and the Bible's clear that we're not supposed to do that. So, so anyways, the things that are going on in life right now is I am having a grandkid today. I am so excited. And so I want to give a little bit of background what I mean by I'm having a grandkid, because it's not quite as simple as that sounds. It is that simple in my heart, but I'll give you a little story. So I was talking about in my last episode, if you remember, my brother and his wife had moved to Toronto, and he had gotten a job out there, and they were part of a small group. And then my dad, who was getting a lung transplant, my mom and dad moved out there, and My youngest sister as well moved out there. She had just gone through a horrible divorce and lost custody of her two kids, and she moved out there as well to be close to family. There's more to it than all that, but I don't want to get into her story. Just give you that simple detail. And my brother had two daughters, Anna and Becca, and they were just kids at the time. They were, I want to say, I don't remember exactly their ages when they moved out there, but probably in that 8, 9, 10 years old range for Anna. I'd have to do the math and think of the years, but it's just roughly like that. So not teenagers. And Anna and Becca are only like a year and a half apart in age, so really close in age. And they'd had these two daughters. And incidentally, my brother and sister-in-law and those two girls had gone through a horrible experience. And I'm not going to say who or any of those things. All my family knows, and I don't feel right to kind of put some people out there. But my nieces, both of them, had gotten molested when they were in that 6, 7 years old range, and by another family member, by a cousin, and was really devastating for our entire family to have that happen. And my brother went from being a really solid, strong man. He owned a construction company. Him and my uncle did together. We had a lot of family out in Manitoba, and so they owned a construction company together. My brother did with my uncle, and they were doing really well, building houses, doing really, really well. And he just kind of fell apart a little bit. My brother did, and we were going to TACF, and which is Toronto Airport Church, or Catch the Fire, and they decided that they wanted to start going out there full time. They really liked some things that were happening. They joined the small group, so they decided that they were going to move out there full time, and so they did. And then it was, after that my dad needed the lung transplant, and he moved out there. And then we went out, my wife and I went out to visit, partly to visit my dad. This was before he had his lung transplant, and partly there's an evangelist. His name was Reinhard Bonnke, and he started Christ for All Nations, and he was having what he calls an impartation breakfast, but essentially sharing some story and testimony, and he would go around to different areas and then raise some support for what they were doing in missions and stuff. And so he had a book that was phenomenal book, and I can't think of what the name of it is called, but we my wife and I had just read it and just really loved his story, loved who he was, and maybe I'll get into that in a different time, just talking about it a little bit more, because it had a huge impact on my life in later years. But we went to this impartation breakfast. We went to this the small group that my brother was a part of, and this church, and we just really loved it. That we talked about, it was Chris and Brenda were the people that were running the small group. Super down to earth, kind, loving people, very unassuming. They actually lived in a trailer. And I don't mean a trailer house. They lived in a camper on a farm where they raised horses. Dirt poor, and yet seemed super, super, super genuine and kind. It's kind of almost a little bit like meeting the Dalai Lama or something. Like, it had that kind of feel to it, the way they were living and doing stuff. And we got to know them, and just they spoke some things into our life that we just really needed to hear at the time. And so I'm going to get into that in a couple minutes of some of the decisions we made to move there. But my niece, so she was born in 2001, and was my younger brother's daughter. And through a long series of circumstances, I'm going to jump almost to the end of the group for just a moment. She, my brother at 17 years old, kicked her out of the house, her and her 16-year-old sister, because they weren't living by the dynamics that group wanted. Eventually this small group became kind of a church unto themselves, and really kind of became a cult. And that's the whole thing. Not kind of became, they became a cult. My brother is still heavily involved in it. They've gone from Toronto to Florida and now to Texas, and my brother is hugely involved in it. So is my sister-in-law, and so is his other daughter, Becca, and they're very, very involved in this cult. So is my mom. And part of the cult stuff is that if you don't agree with them, they shun you. They have nothing to do with you. And so Anna was a 17-year-old, super sweet kid, but a little stubborn, like probably lots of 17-year-olds. And the group basically told my brother and said, "Oh, your daughter's going to become nothing. She's lazy. She's this. She's that. So therefore, you need to send a message to her and kick her out of your home and make her go live on her own, so that she can turn around and find what she needs in life." And my brother did it. He kicked both his girls out at 17 and 16, and they were living in an apartment. On top of this, because of the way the cult had kind of encouraged them, and the way my brother had done stuff, they had moved from Ontario to Florida, and they weren't going to school really. They did homeschool for a few years, and then they didn't. The thing about homeschool is great. You can do it from home and it works. I'm not anti-homeschool at all, but you got to have a little bit of stay with it. You got to do your work. You got to, just like anything else. And unfortunately, they were homeschooled, but they weren't doing any of the schoolwork. So really, they stopped with about a 9th or 10th grade education, and that's where they had finished. And they were just left on their own. And then when my brother decided to move with the group to Texas, Anna was living in Florida. Her sister had gone back to the group, and not living with my brother, but had gone back to the group. But Anna she didn't. And she'd gotten a boyfriend and was kind of, she was working at Dollar General and trying to just make everything work. And my brother just flat out rejected her. They'd have a little bit of contact, but almost none. And then when he went off to Texas, they just dropped her completely. And so Anna ended up getting married to her boyfriend, Tristan, a couple of years ago. And she was right around 20, 21 years old and got married. And then her and her husband were living in Florida, really struggling to find jobs that they could make any real living at. So they were living with the two of them and a couple friends in a house kind of in the slums, a really, really rough neighborhood for a while. And then that wasn't real safe. So then they moved. His dad had a shop that he did granite countertop, made granite countertops out of, and had a 1-bedroom on there. So they moved there to that shop and were living with his dad at that shop, and it just not going well. And there was a series of circumstances. The place where my wife works was hiring, and we were able to help them get a job up here. And so they came and they lived with us for 3 to 4 months and got a job working locally here where we are. And we just got to just love on them and be family to them. And so right now she calls us her adoptive parents, and we really have, she's not a kid anymore. Although because of a lot of trauma and a lot of abuse in a lot of ways, she's still quite childlike, and I'm not going to get into all that kind of stuff, but it's a hard road for her for sure. And her and her husband are here, and they've now been in their own apartment for about 1.5 years, just living and doing life. It's been awesome to see. They grow. She's not working right now, and he's got a job that he loves doing, and is super happy for them. And they're just doing physically well. We've been able to just be here, be family with them. Part of the thing that had happened as well through all this cult stuff, her mom, Elaine, is from just north of where we are now, northern Minnesota. And so she's got cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents that all live up in northern Minnesota. But as part of the shunning thing, her mom would tell her again and again and again that all this family was evil, and kind of try to brainwash her with all that stuff. And we've been able to, took a little bit, but we were able to help her reconnect to all that family. So she's got all that connection to her grandparents and her aunts and uncles, and super, super happy for them. And they're doing really good. But today, she is having a baby. She's gotten induced here just a little bit ago. I'm going to go over to my wife's over at the hospital right now with her. I'm going to go over a little bit later. And we are, she's having a baby, and they're calling us Grandpa and Grandma. And they tried at one point to reach out to my brother and his wife and just let them know, hey, you actually are going to be grandparents. And they just completely rejected. My sister-in-law did respond with a simple, "Oh, thanks for letting us know," about a week after she had sent a message to them. And that was it. That's all they've heard so far from them. Nothing else. It's mind-blowing to me. Even having been part of the group and the stuff, I still can't even fathom some of the different things that they still do. It's unreal how you can just reject a grandkid, a newborn grandkid. But sorry, it's really heartbreaking to me. It's hard to watch Anna go through that. It's really hard to see that pain for her. Really thankful for Tristan. He's been really good with her. He's gone through a lot of his own things, and another day, another time for that story. But I'm just so proud of them that they just keep, they're fighting at life, and so thankful that we get to be in their lives. And now, because of that, I get to be a grandpa. And you know what? It might not have been meant to be my role, but I'm thankful to get to do it. And I'm blessed and honored to be able to get to do that. So really excited today to see this new little miracle from God coming to the earth. And really proud of Anna, really proud of Tristan, really happy for them. And so I know they didn't get real far into my story today. I'll do that here as we keep going, but that's what's happening today. Super excited. So you can call me Grandpa Mike next time you see me. All right. Wanted to show you this. Some new merch. I got some amazing friends. Nathan and Amber McFarland. They've been my friends since I was probably 14, 15 years old. And they have a business called Etched Laser. You can find them on Facebook, or Etched Laser LLC. You can find them on Facebook. You can find them on Etsy. But they do some phenomenal gear. Actually, they take care of all my business gear. This Harrison Co. hat, that's them for my construction business. Super thankful for them. Love them so much. Love them because they're my friends, first of all. Incredible friends. But as far as the quality of clothing and everything goes, I couldn't recommend them higher. So if you've got a business, church, anything like that, and you need clothing, check them out. They do a ton of other things. So check them out with stuff, any kind of laser engraving, all kinds of products that they have. So please, like I said, check them out. Etched Laser LLC. All right. So thankful that you could join me here today. Remember, love one another as Jesus first loved us. Love you, appreciate you, and have yourself a phenomenal rest of your week.